I want to get to some of those things, but let's start here for a minute, okay? I want to play this clip for you because I don't know if you've seen it, because I think this is, along with the Woodward tapes, and I think there's, I don't know, I'm of a couple of minds about this in terms of what this election is going to turn on, I think. But here is Olivia Troy. She was Mike Pence's lead staffer on the COVID task force. She resigned 2 months ago, and she is now speaking out in one of those, an ad from those Republicans Against Trump thing. It's not quite the Lincoln Project. It's something different. But check this out.
I'm Olivia Troy. I was Homeland Security and Counterterrorism Advisor to Vice President Pence and served as Vice President Pence's lead staff member on the COVID-19 response. I've been on the COVID task force from day one. The virus was very unpredictable at the beginning. There were a lot of unknowns, but towards the middle of February, we knew it wasn't a matter of if COVID would become a big pandemic here in the United States. It was a matter of when. But the president didn't want to hear that because his biggest concern was that we were in an election year, and how is this going to affect what he considered to be his record of success? It was shocking to see the president saying that the virus was a hoax, saying that everything's okay when we know that it's not. The truth is, he doesn't actually care about anyone else but himself. He made a statement once that was very striking. I never forgot it because it pretty much defined who he was. When we were in a task force meeting, the president said, maybe this COVID thing is a good thing. I don't like shaking hands with people. I don't have to shake hands with these disgusting people. Those disgusting people are the same people that he claims to care about. These are the people still going to his rallies today who have complete faith in who he is. If the president had taken this virus seriously, or if he had actually made an effort to tell how serious it was, he would have slowed the virus spread. He would have saved lives. It was the opportunity and honor of a lifetime to be able to serve in the White House. I put my heart and soul into this role every single day. But at some points, I would come home at night, I would look myself in the mirror and say, are you really making a difference? Does it matter? Because no matter how hard you work and what you do, the president is going to do something that is detrimental to keeping Americans safe, which is why you signed up for this role. It was awful. It was terrifying. I have been a Republican for my entire life. I am a McCain Republican, I am a Bush Republican, and I am voting for Joe Biden because I truly believe we are at a time of constitutional crisis. At this point, it's country over party.
When I get past the idea that anybody could be a McCain Republican or a Bush Republican or a Republican, that to me, that ad is effective in two different ways, it seems to me, both in terms of his utter failure in the response to COVID, enough so that you have people resign in the middle of that, somebody who is a die in the wood. Well, and then the other part is this is his own deplorables moment too, isn't it?
Well, first off, I want to say he is right about the handshake thing. I don't know why we do that. It's disgusting even when there's not a pandemic. It's just gross. We just shouldn't do it. We shouldn't be touching each other. When you just meet someone, you shouldn't do it.
I agree with that.
We should bow. But bowing is great. It's a noble thing to do. It's elegant.
You don't think that those people are disgusting. You just think that all humanity is disgusting.
I don't think all humanity is disgusting. I just think, I know what I do with my hands. Okay. Let's just put it that way. You don't want to shake my hand.
I have not. That is one.
You have not shaken my hand.
Yeah.
You've not shaken my hand. So, correct.
But on a political level.
On a political level, here's the thing about the coronavirus, about messaging about the coronavirus. Obviously, from where you and I are sitting, it looks like Biden should be up by 20-25%, right? And when people are polled about how Trump's doing on the coronavirus, he's in the low 40s there, right?
I think even the mid 30s, even.
Maybe mid 30s, maybe low 40s. Yeah, okay. I've seen some with mid 30s. It depends a little bit on the phrasing, but generally, most people are unhappy. But a shocking number of people are fine with all of this. The 200,000 deaths and the economic collapse and the complete dysfunction from Washington, both from Congress and just from within the administration, and just how cartoonishly bad the response has been. But the problem is, people don't really have a yardstick to measure this against. Because, of course, we as Americans, we are just not aware of other countries. You want to tell someone that, hey, if you're in South Korea, you can get a free test and get the results within an hour, every single person in the country, whatever you want. They're like, I don't believe that. No, testing has to be a huge pain in the ass that you pay for. And it's, of course, it's analogous to socialized medicine. People just don't believe it, that's a thing that exists, and it's just like a common day thing in every country. So, with nothing to compare it to, of course, the Republican messaging is just going to sink into the kind of relativism. Well, how do you know any other president wouldn't have had 200,000 deaths? And in all fairness, it would be hyperbolic to say, oh, well, if Hillary had won, there would be 0 deaths. Well, no, that's nonsense. That's not the case. There's a lot of structural problems. There's a federal problem. Excuse me, I'm sick also.
And
it's not COVID. It's not COVID, but don't shake my hands. I am sick. I am sick. And so, you're going to have to go easy. You're going to have to go easy on me today.
Well, but I think your point is really well taken. And there's 2 things that occur to me. Like, one, I think I saw a stat the other day that based upon just the size of our country relative to, let's say, Canada, we would have something like 7,000 deaths. Now, I think that seems to be, but we should also say, you're right. Structurally speaking, Canada is much more suited to deal with a crisis like this. We all saw that video of how easy it was for people to get unemployment insurance and stay at home and not work. And you have a more I think you have a better healthcare system in terms of helping people. But yes, it's hard to say Trump is responsible for X number of deaths. You just know that that his failures have led to deaths, and it's probably tens of thousands that were I don't know what unnecessary means, but were extra essentially because of his incompetence. And then the other thing that you raise is a good point. I remember reading about focus groups where they would tell people the Republican proposal for, let's say, whatever it was. And the focus groups thought that that response was so outrageous that they did not believe that Republicans were actually doing that. And so they thought it was just a Democratic lie. They were like, there's no way that that's a real proposal. And they just assumed it was a lie that was being told by the Democrats.
Well, it really is extraordinary. The totality of this response of how incompetent the Trump response has been. And honestly, it's so overwhelming that I think your average person who is not like closely following politics, like watching MSNBC every day or CNN every day, or as it were, just like can't wrap their head around how bad it. I mean, I can't really wrap my head around it. It's kind of like when Trump's, the corruption in the administration. It's like if you actually wrote it all down and read it to me, I'm gonna have to think like, oh, you got to be pulling my leg.
Right.
Really, that's all just happening. And as well, it's like, this is a pandemic. Like, this is a complicated thing, right? And this is a complicated. There's multiple layers of authority when you have an emergency like this, and you have, like, say, intransigent Republican governors, for instance, who are going to, screw the whole thing up. So it's difficult to explain that actual power dynamic if you're not already like very, very well acquainted with it. And as well, I mean, I honestly, when faced with that complexity, I think people just want to go with what sounds nice. So when Trump goes on television and says, "Hey, I got a miracle cure, like drink this crap," they're selling on the InfoWars shop. People are like, "Okay, that's simple. That's easier." Of course, it's simple to tell people to wear a mask and that that's socially distanced, and we'll give you a check and all that stuff. But well, I mean, that costs money, right?
Here is there is a poll that was out today. New York Times Siena College poll, likely voters from September 10th to the 16th. By a 25-point margin, 60% to 35%, they trust Biden over Trump on the issue of the pandemic. And that is translating into increasing leads in states like Arizona, in close to in Maine, the tide in North Carolina.
Roll Tide.
In all three states, the Democratic Senate candidates were leading Republican incumbents by 5 percentage points or more. So you got Collins of Maine is down 5 points to Sarah Gideon.
She's toast. She's toast.
Collins is toast. I think Martha McSally is toast. Tom Tillis could be toast.
I think he's toast. Yeah, I think all three of those are gone.
Now, we should say that these trends existed pre-pandemic. I mean, if you look at the polls in terms of the Senate polls before this, they were all in trouble in January. It's just it's now it's more dramatic, and I think part of it is they're associating with Donald Trump. I think I think the impeachment stuff is hurting, and and I think this is. But let me ask you this, and then we'll get to the question of how relevant is the actual vote going to be on some level? But
sure, of course.
It's on some level it's silly to talk about, like, if there was no coronavirus, I feel like Joe Biden might have some problems right now. From the perspective of a leftist, I know how this is going to go with. He's going to come in, he's going to get in because of the coronavirus, and it's going to be it's going to be interpreted as a mandate for moderation. I mean, that's the way it always works in that regard. And I think, sadly, that is going to spell a problem for 2022.